Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is Bethany Creaser, a self-proclaimed game geek. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scott.
Now, most people, when they hear the word geek, that isn't something you want to be called, but you consider yourself a self-proclaimed
Oh,
geek.
absolutely. I've always have been a geek
Now,
all my life.
The TV, though, TV makes geeks look really bad. Do you find that's the case?
I do find that's the case, and is the reason why I personally don't care for The Big Bang Theory, because I think it actually makes fun of geeks. But there are plenty of other shows out now, like the show Community, which actually celebrates geekdom, and which of course I do love that one.
Well, I've heard there's a saying, be good to a geek because you'll probably be working for one someday.
Yes, I have heard that too. I've actually had a friend of mine who said I should have dated the geeky guys in school because they're the ones who went somewhere.
Right. And and who are you? You're long-term local.
Yes, I was born and raised in Newport, actually just down the road from the Brown Cow. I never thought I'd end up back home in the kingdom, and I have, and I'm quite pleased that I'm able to live back at home.
And you never decided to take over the family
No,
jewelry business?
No, I did not.
And that chapter, Myers Jewelry, has just come to an end.
Yes, it has. It just closed at the end of December.
Right. Did you grow up going to the store?
Yes, I actually even helped my dad just this past Christmas one last time.
Yeah. And so both of your parents are retired.
Yes, they are.
Right. Did it ever help having your mother work at the state police barracks?
And in what way, I guess?
Well, I don't know if geeks get in trouble.
Oh, no, I think geeks tend to be a very low-key type group and not really big troublemakers.
Okay. All right. You're here today because you have a group called the Border Board Games
Yes.
Club. And tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, so at Border Board Games, we play primarily two types of games. We've got board games, and we also play role-playing games. We play board games every third Saturday of the month at the Derby Line Village Hall. And we play the role-playing games once a month. We play at my house in Derby Line, although that date is not as set in stone. We schedule that month by month, depending on when people can play.
Now, when I think of board games, I'm not a game player. When it comes to playing cards, I know how to play fish.
Right.
And when I think of board games, I think of Monopoly.
Right.
But these games are a little bit different.
Yes, they are quite a bit different. I grew up playing the traditional board games like Monopoly and Sorry and Life, and growing up, I absolutely loved playing those games. I kept always asking my parents and my brothers and sisters to always play. So I've always been a gamer. It's just I wasn't introduced to these types of games until I'd say it was about 6 or 7 years ago. And it was a friend online who suggested that we try these games. And they're known as Euro games. And what's different about them is that a lot of them don't look like a traditional board game. A lot of them don't even have a board. A lot of them don't even have dice. They're more, I relate them more to, say, a card game like Hearts or Spades, where you've got the luck of the draw. But then it's up to you what strategy you're going to use to play that hand that was dealt to you. And that's how I like to relate these games. The first game that my husband and I purchased was this game, Carcassonne. And this one doesn't even have a board. And down in front of us actually is a piece from this game, the big meeple.
What is he?
He is what is called a meeple, which is, I think, means my people. And in the gaming world, it's just abbreviated as meeple. We just call them meeples. And that game, as soon as we played it, my husband and I fell in love with these games. It just, to me, it blew all the traditional American board games out of the water.
You know, I think Richard took my place at the Chronicle when I got done the Chronicle, and so I know Richard, your husband,
Yes.
a little bit. Is he a geek too?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Was he a geek born and raised, or did it kind of like rub off on him?
I think he's always been a geek like me, yes.
And so, but you discovered these kind of games together?
I actually started playing Dungeons and Dragons, which is it's a role-playing game, which doesn't look like a game because it's a book.
Mm-hmm.
I actually started playing that about 10, 11 years ago. And that's actually how I met my husband, Richard.
Oh, really?
At the time, after I graduated college, I went out to Seattle, and then he's originally from Nova Scotia, so he was living in Halifax, and I was playing online, and that's how we met, playing Dungeons and Dragons online.
Really? No, I didn't know that.
Yes. So a super geeky way to meet.
And it's been a happy connection of geeks ever since.
Oh, yes.
Now, did you have anything like non-traditional for a wedding? Like, did
No,
you,
actually, it was very traditional.
was that?
Yes.
Like I was envisioning you maybe like Dungeons and Dragons theme or
no,
something.
no. Although I think at the time when we got married, we hadn't played these board games,
Right.
and I think at the time if we were into these games, we might have actually had a reception where we would
Now,
play.
do you have
some-
children?
No, we do not.
Okay, so you don't. You haven't started teaching any children.
I teach my nieces and nephews. I'm working on them.
Now, what do they think about it?
My nieces and nephews, they love it. This game here, this is a la carte, is what my nieces and nephews call the cooking game.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very lighthearted game. It's very easy and quick. It's one of those games that's great for kids, but it's also great for adults as well. And whenever I introduce my nieces and nephews to any of these games, they just immediately fall in love with them.
So what's good for somebody like me? I have very short attention span. I mean, if a game goes more than half an hour, that's pretty much it.
Yes. Well, a lot of these games are longer. Actually, on the sides of the games, they tell you how long it takes, such as this one, Settlers of Catan here, it says it should take 60 minutes. But there's a lot of different games, and this one is called Timeline, which I think is probably more up your alley, because this is all about history.
Really?
It's all cards, where you've got different cards with different historical events, like the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen.
Right.
So on one side you have that, on the other side as a year.
Right.
And on the table you will place a start card with the year face up. And you have cards in front of yourself, each person around the table, and you have to place your card in the timeline. So I have the founding of the Knights Templar. Is it before or after the Battle of Alamo in 1836? So you place it in the timeline and flip it over, and if you're correct, the next person goes. The goal is to get rid of all your cards first, because if you are incorrect, you draw another card.
So are all your games, do they all have something educational about them?
Not all of them. A lot of them do, which is why some of them I keep saying would be perfect for schools.
Right.
And they teach. I've always been good at math, but I've never been good at math in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I always needed to figure everything on pen and paper. But since playing these games, my simple addition skills in my head have definitely improved. There's all sorts of games that do use basic math. There's a game, a lot of them actually might teach even a bit of geography, because you'll have a map of the United States where it has the different cities on it, so it can help teach you where different cities are located in the country. Some are just pure fun, like a la carte's just pure fun. I mean, it's not teaching you nearly anything about cooking. It's just a fun game to play.
You know, one game I enjoy playing, but it doesn't go up to your caliber, I don't believe, because it's just fun. Apples to Apples.
That one is, I have not played that one, and I know that one is a more, that's a mainstream game that you can buy at most stores, and I've never played it. I've wanted to try it, and but again, I know it's not like your traditional Monopoly and Sorry.
Right. It's actually fun to play with people you know, because the answers, if you know the people you're playing with, you can kind of try to figure out how they would choose to, because you have a number of cards, and I can't really explain it, but I enjoy it, and it's a relatively quick game. It's a thinking game, but it's not thinking at a deep level.
Well, I see that. What I like about a lot of these too is that they require thinking and strategy, and it's, to me, I guess it helps me keep my brain sharp. But it's not on the level. To me, I'm not a chess player. I know how to play chess. I've just never been really great at chess, and to me, chess is the ultimate mind against mind game, because it is definitely, my brain against your brain, and I've never been really great at that game. But these games, yes, they do require thinking and strategy, but not to the same level as chess.
Right. But can you play chess?
Yes, I can.
Now, my wife and my sons, they're big cribbage players.
Yes.
Now, my wife has tried to show me how to play cribbage, and I don't know if it's just because I don't want to learn or just have my daughter and I are the same way. We cannot even grasp it. It's just like right over our heads.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up playing cribbage as well. I mean, I think every Vermonter has taught cribbage at some point in their life.
Yeah. Well, this is one Vermonter who just doesn't get it. Like, as I said, even my idea of playing cards is, fish, war. I wouldn't have a clue how to play poker. Now, we see all these games, but do you like the internet, the electronic versions?
I have played video games, and I do enjoy playing some video games, but I prefer to play the tabletop games. I like the more social aspect of it. When you're playing a video game, it's not very social at all. It's just pretty much yourself playing the game online, or whether it's through a console. And I do prefer these.
Yeah, but you have some people who, when they play games, like my wife is good at almost everything she does, but she is very competitive.
Yes.
Do you have many? Are you competitive? Like, are you going to like flip a game over?
No. That's one thing about the people who come play at board games. We play because we just enjoy playing board games. I love to play board games, but I'm not. And there's certain games that I love to play, but I know I'm not going to win. But I enjoy playing them because I love the challenge that the game presents me, and I have fun doing it. There are some people in the hobby gaming world who, yes, they do get quite competitive, but I just play just for the pure enjoyment of it because I just find it fun.
So when does the group meet?
It's every third Saturday of each month at the Derby Line Village Hall. We begin at 6 o'clock in the evening. I think the next date is February 17th, I believe. Whatever the third Saturday in February is, would be the next time we meet to play.
Right, and is this like bring your own game?
You can bring your own games if you have games you want to bring and you want to play. My husband Richard and I, we have a big bag that we pack full of games, and we just bring them to the hall, and once we get there, we see who shows up, and we decide which games we want to play for the evening.
Now, do you all play in one group, or do you play, like, do you have different tables where people are?
We usually have about 2 tables going, because there's usually, I'd say about 8 to 10 people will show up. If we get more, and then we might have 3 tables. A lot of these games are for 4 or 5 players. Some go up to even 6 to 8 players. But typically, we've got 2 tables going.
Now, would you classify all of you as geeks, or are you just like part-time geeks?
You see, that's the thing. That's why I've tried to reach out to find other geeks up here because what I've found is that all my gaming friends tend to be quite geeky. I don't know what it is about these games that attracts geeks, but they do. And you know, there's different types of geeks. A couple of the people who come play, they're what I would call a computer geek. There are some who are, you know, more literary or historical geeks. You know, we seem to love Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. We watch, you know, like Doctor Who or Battlestar Galactica. We all seem to have those same interests.
I bet you if my daughter didn't go way to Maine, you know, she's not into this, but she lives with 3 women. Just their lives came together, and the 3 of them, they're into Dungeons and Dragons and everything, and they get along great because my daughter's from a totally different world than them, but she gets such a kick out of it, and there's 3 of them, and they just live and breathe like Dungeons and Dragons and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like growing up here, I wasn't really exposed to, say, Dungeons and Dragons, or a lot of my gamer friends also love like superheroes and comics. And you know, growing up here, there was nowhere to buy comics. There's nowhere to buy these. Well, there's nowhere to buy these games even today. None of my friends really played Dungeons and Dragons because Dungeons and Dragons has been around since the 70s. So I was never exposed to it as a kid, and I think if I would have been right into playing those types of games or reading comics. But it's just growing up here, it's a little more sheltered, I guess.
So what about your siblings? Do any of them get into this, or
No.
they always thought you were just a little off?
My sister has always said to me, I have no idea. She goes, I don't get. She says, how you could be. She's not saying it in a mean way, but how you could be, like, so different in the family. You know, I think they've accepted the fact that I am just this geeky, nerdy type, and I think they're boggled as to how in the world I turned into such a geek.
But in being able to say that, though, isn't that refreshing, though, to be able to say, I am a geek?
Oh, yes. When I was a kid, knowing the world, I would never, ever, I knew it. I've always known it, but it's not something that you would ever admit, especially as a teenager. But then as you get older, you realize, you know what, that's how I am, and that's how I'll always be.
So if somebody you ran into an old classmate, and they said, you are such a geek. Now, probably that's like, you would want to say, well, thank you.
Oh, yes. They are correct, absolutely.
Oh, that's an interesting bend on things. And what about your parents? Do they play anything?
No, actually, they don't. And again, I have no idea where this came from at all. They've played some cards, you know, like a cribbage.
Right.
But otherwise, no.
So what about, I know it's a little bit different, but some people, they get a thrill over going gambling because there's all those games, and I love going, like, you know, my idea of high stakes gambling, once I lose $5, that's it. I'm not going to give away my money to anybody. But I like going to a gambling casino just because of the lights and everything. Are you into that at all?
I do. I have gone to casinos. I have gambled. I'm more like you. I'm not crazy about gambling my money away.
Right.
But yeah, I do. My favorite casino game is craps.
Right.
That's the one game that I will play, and it's actually funny because if you know craps, you'll know the odds in Settlers of Catan.
Right.
Because this one involves the odds of rolling two dice.
Right.
And the best odds are at number 7 coming up. And then the best odds after that are the 6 and 8, which is essentially a game of craps. Although, of course, that puts quite a different spin on the rolling of those 2 dice. But
So do you have a higher tolerance to loss than $5 like me?
I go, if I decide I'm going to go to, say, a casino, I'll go with a certain amount of money in my hand, and that's it. And a lot of times I don't even use it all because I don't like to see it go away.
So why don't you demonstrate us a game?
Sure. I think a great demonstration would be the game Carcassonne. So what this game is, it's called Carcassonne, which actually I can put the cover right there in front of the camera so you can see it better. This is a game that should take about 30 to 45 minutes to play, and it's for 2 to 5 people. They recommend ages 8 and up for this.
And we're going to do this. We're going to do the shortened version.
I'll just explain it real quick.
Now, first of all, what are these little things here?
Okay, so these little pieces here are your pieces. Each person chooses a color.
Right.
During the show, you saw the big guy sitting in front of the desks here. Again, we call them meeples. And this is the game, I think, that actually, I guess you could say, invented meeples. So each person chooses a color that they want to do to represent who they are. We have, with this game, as you see, there really isn't a board. This is a tile game where you've got different tiles that you're going to draw and lay. Now, what I've done here is this particular version that I have, it starts out with the river. And I've already laid it out. Normally what would have happened is these would be face over, and each person would draw one and lay it one by one until it came back around to the start player. In addition, we have this is a scoring track where each one of us would put a meeple starting at 0. Because this game, what you're trying to do is get the most points. And the game ends when you are finished drawing all the tiles that I have. All the tiles are in this bag. So what's going to happen on a turn is you reach into the bag and you're going to draw a tile. Now in this, what you've got to do is place the tile somewhere that'll fit on the board. And on this particular tile right here, you can see there is a piece of a city.
Right.
And what you do is after placing a tile, you can claim something on that tile. So as you see, I placed the city against another piece of a city right there on the board. Now I could have placed it here as well because that's legal, because you got the green side meeting up with the green side and the city side meeting up with the city side. If I wanted to claim that city, I put my meeple there. I get points for completing that city, closing it off. When I close it off, I actually get 2 points per block. I'm trying to find a tile to show you what would happen if I was to complete the city and put that tile down. I would get 2 points per tile, so I get 2, 4, 6 points. I would move my piece up 6 points, and that city is closed. And you keep going. So if I drew another tile, such as this, which is a road tile, I have to place the road tile again where it's legal to place. If I place it here, I can claim the road. If I finish the road with a tile, such as this, I get 1 point per tile, so 1, 2, 3 points, and then I take my piece back.
Right. And when is the winner decided, and how?
When all the tiles in this bag are drawn.
Right.
And what's fun about this game is that when you draw a tile, you're supposed to let everybody at the table see it. And of course, you can try to convince me to place the tile somewhere advantageous to you. Although sometimes it's a matter of you're looking, because as you play, the board gets bigger. You're building a board, you're building a map. It's actually quite nice to look at the end when the tiles are all laid out on the table. But sometimes it reaches a point where you're trying to find a legal place to place it. I have never ever drawn a tile where you cannot place it. I've always been able to place a tile no matter what. Sometimes you have to place it where it might not necessarily be advantageous to you, or you don't have any use for it. But that's the basic rules. There are a couple other ways of getting points, such as claiming what they call that a cloister or monastery. to get the points for the monastery, you have to surround it completely with tiles. Once it's surrounded, you take it back. The other way you can claim points is after you lay a tile, you can put your meeple down. I lay him down to indicate this is a farmer. And he is going to farm all the fields that he's connected to. And for every, if he was actually here, for every finished city, he gets 4 points at the end of the game. The problem with the farmer is when you place him, he's there for the whole game, so you don't get him back. Because there's more meeples than this than what the people get. But once you've placed them, if you don't have any meeples to place when you lay a tile, you can't claim anything on the game at all.
Now, I'm looking at various colors here. Does that mean you can have that many different players?
Yes, there's five people can play this game.
Now, how many the minimum? 2?
2, yes. 2.
Right.
This is actually a great game for 2 people. This was the first game my husband and I purchased and played together. And we've played it quite a bit when we first got it, and it's very playable for 2 people. But it's also a game that no matter how many people you have, it plays very well depending on how many people you have. Some games are better with more players than 2 players. Some games, such as the Settlers of Catan, they need 3 people to play, which is, we held off buying that game for a while because it was just the 2 of us and we didn't have that 3rd person to play with us.
Now, where do you get such games? Because as you were saying, there's really no game store.
Correct. These games, there are hobby game stores. Burlington has one, down in West Lebanon, New Hampshire. There is one. But because, if we don't want to travel all the way to either Burlington or West Lebanon, you pretty much order them online.
And you probably, when you get one, you're just like a kid in a candy
store. Oh, yes. That's correct. We can't wait when we get a package in the mail and we're expecting new games.
So these are actually, you might not start with the board.
Right.
But they are board games, because this one you're actually creating the board.
This one you're creating the board. Again, I love to look at this when it's all done, because every time it's finished, you get a different look. We also have this game here. It's called Dominion. And what you're going to see with this one is that it's all cards. There is not a board at all in this game. There's no board. There's no pieces. There's no dice. And this game is strictly cards. Now, we consider this a board game, even though it's technically a card game, because in the gaming world, when you say a card game, people think of what we call collectible card games, which is Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! Are the 2 that most people have heard of. So when we say card games, that's what most gamers think. So when we talk about a game like Dominion, where it's all cards, we call it a board game. Just like Timeline that I showed you, we would call this a board game, even though it's all cards.
But I also noticed you have quite a few dice over there.
Yes.
So you do have some games where you...
Well, what you use these different dice for are the role-playing games, which the common one that people know is Dungeons and Dragons. Again, it's a book. So this does not have a board. This does not have pieces. This is all your imagination. The way I like to call a role-playing game is that it's a group of people who are creating a story together. And there's someone who, what we call our game master or GM, who sets the background of the story. And that one is all pure imagination. You know, when you're reading a book and you picture in your head like what the characters look like, what things look like, just you envision everything in your head, and that's exactly what a role-playing game is. You come up with this character and you can just imagine what the scene is going to look like, and everyone at the table is telling it's making a story up on the fly.
So have you ever tried theater then, since you like to do this? You know,
No,
the role
it's.
play and
I don't know how it would be at theater. It is essentially acting. The role playing is essentially acting, but I think most people who play are a bit shy.
Right.
And I'm not sure how I would actually do.
Okay. Thanks for showing me those.
Right, you're welcome.
Let's tell the viewers when your next group is and where.
Okay, so for board games, it'll be the third Saturday of every month.
Right.
That's at the Derby Line Village Hall at 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
I think the next date is February 17th. So whatever, I could be off on that day, but whatever the Saturday is. We also play a role-playing game once a month as well. The next time we're playing that is February 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
That's will be at my house in Derby Line. If you want more information, I have a website that I keep updated, and I always post the next game date.
And what is that called?
Is Border Board Games. It's not an easy site to say, so the best thing to do if you want to look up the site is just Google Border Board Games, and you should find the Border Board Games website. It's a free Google site, so the URL is quite long.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you
Thanks for having me.
for coming on the show, and maybe someday I will venture and take part, but you'll have to set me up with an easy game, because I'm a very simple person.
Yeah.
And it has to be relatively short, because my attention span does not last very long.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thanks.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.